So every South African has at least asked the following question once in their life. Why is the Rand doing that? And so one day the Rand is flexing against the dollar, the other day it's standing there waving a white flag. So today we are going to tackle this exact question. And the question would be, is the recent strength that we have seen the start of a bigger comeback for the Rand, or is it just a, well, short-term twist of the beginning of a Cinderella story? And as we get into this, before you place your next trade, trust me when I say you are going to want to watch this. Welcome back. This is your daily market brief brought to you by ATFX Africa, and today I am joined by our very own Mbali. She is a relationship manager here at ATFX, and we are going to unpack what is really driving the value behind this specific currency. We are going to explore short-term sentiment, medium-term fundamentals, and also touch on that long-term outlook that could shape this specific currency's next big move. So grab your charts and your cup of coffee, because this one is going to get interesting. Mbali, welcome. Could you please give us a short introduction on yourself, just so that our clients can also get to know you a little bit better?
Sure, thank you for having me, Francois. I am a relationship manager here at ATFX, and I've been in the industry for around 10 years already, and I have a background in economics. I hold a degree in economics and international relations.
Absolutely fantastic. Well, Mbali, I think we're just going to jump straight into it today. Now, during the build-up to this session, obviously myself and you've had multiple conversations, and during the one conversation, you mentioned to me that in the short term, the Rand's strength has been very heavily influenced by factors like risk appetite, speculation, and a softer dollar. Now, my question here that I want to ask is, how sustainable do you think this kind of sentiment-driven, because I think that is what we can call this current rally that we are experiencing on the dollar, how sustainable is this sentiment-driven rally that we are seeing? And what would be some of the warning signs that, maybe strength could be fading?
Sure. It is not sustainable, sir. And I say this because market sentiment and risk appetite are very volatile and often driven by speculators who are in it for the short term. For example, there is data showing that from early this year to date, there have been large volumes of capital flowing into South Africa, and that capital comes from speculators. And we see this because there are long positions, or there were long positions on the Rand from traders who are non-commercial. So this means that they are not directly involved in business in South Africa, not in commodities or any other asset.
For our viewers here today, okay, when you are saying that the capital flowing into the country is speculative, what does this mean?
This means that it is for the intention of profiting solely, and it has the ability to quickly move out of the country as well. It is not bound as compared to foreign direct investment.
Fantastic, and thank you for that explanation. Now, during some of our conversations as well, you highlighted commodities, especially gold. I mean, gold is on everyone's tongue at this point in stage. It's the main topic. I mean, it's achieving new all-time highs, etc. But you mentioned that gold specifically is kind of that tailwind that is driving the South African Rand's strength at the moment. And as I said, we've seen gold stay strong recently, which normally supports the Rand. But my question here today is, how tight is this relationship today? Could it still hold if we see gold global demand slow down, weak data out of China, or maybe even the price of gold drop? What would be those effects on the South African Rand?
Sure. So there is a very tight relationship between the demand for gold and the value of the Rand. And this is because the rand is still viewed as a commodity-backed currency. And gold is one of the key commodities that we're exporting. And in fact, we are the biggest exporter of gold in Africa. And so the relationship is quite tight.
Absolutely. That's kind of frightening in one way, I must say.
Zero commission on stocks? Yeah, nothing. What if you could get this value today? Turns out you can. Join ATFX now and let's get you started.
You mentioned something a little earlier. You mentioned about, capital flowing into South Africa. And yes, there is currently billions flowing into South African bonds over the last, I would say, year and a half. But even though that is extremely impressive, it also suggests, in one hand, that foreign investors still see value in us as a country. So the question here does state, though, what does this really say about confidence in the South African economy? And do you think this momentum can continue, or is it just a short-term offset for, the fact that other global countries are decreasing interest rates? So is this kind of just like a short boost that we are seeing, or could we expect this to continue in the longer term?
Let me start off with investor confidence. It appears that it has increased because capital is flowing into the country. And the main reason is what you've highlighted already, which is the rate of return or the yields that are generated from investing in South Africa. Whilst the rest of the world is cutting rates, South Africa has remained at the level that it's at, which seems attractive to investors. In terms of whether this capital inflow and investor confidence is sustainable or not, or if it's just a temporary thing, I would say that it's not sustainable. And the main reason is that when we look at fundamentals within South Africa, the state of our economy is not at a level where we could say we are robust. There's still so much more work to be done until we can get to a level where investor confidence is, continuous and sustainable.
Of that. And your explanation to it was so well put. But one of the other topics I want to touch on today, I think, is one of the things that's been on everyone's lips lately, which is BRICS. Now, during some of our conversations, we touched on the relationship between South Africa and the rest of the BRICS nations and how our alignment has assisted us in some ways. But let's be honest, this specific relationship has been both strategic, but also in a very large way, it's been very controversial. And I think this is also one of the reasons why it's been so big in the media as of late. Now, some see it as us diversifying our partnerships. Others worry it could isolate us from Western markets or even the largest powerhouse in the world, which is the USA. Now, how do you think this evolving relationship could influence the rand's evaluation over the next few years, especially as that global power dynamic starts to shift?
Sure. So this relationship will have a positive impact on the South African economy and the value of the rand in the medium to long term. And some of the reasons would be access to alternative finance for the South African economy, as well as access to economic and policy-making expertise from advanced economies like China. There's so much that we can learn from them. I think it's just a task for our policymakers and politicians to make the best of this relationship, because there's so much more to benefit.
So true. And like you said, our politicians just need to make the best of this. So let's hope they do that as well. But let's look a little further ahead as well. You mentioned some structural challenges, like, for instance, economic stagnation and our export basket being dominated by our raw materials as a commodity-driven currency as well. If we zoom out and we look at that bigger picture globally at the moment. What kind of fundamental shift would South Africa need to see for us to see genuine support for a stronger rand long term?
So I would start with energy. We need efficient and sustainable energy supply so that businesses can function. There's no economy without businesses. So that has to
Very true.
That has to be addressed. And we need to work on improving our economy to a point where we are able to process some of the raw materials that we are producing, so that we are in a position where we are exporting products that are more sophisticated and also in demand. I think that would put us in a really good position in terms of our economy and the value of the rand. What we could also work on, which is something that you mentioned actually in your conversation with the Deputy Minister of Finance, you mentioned cutting the cost of making business in South Africa, which would then attract investors. And you highlighted doing that through strategic partnerships to make sure that things like monopolies are eliminated and you promote more competition and basically creating an environment that is conducive for businesses and investors.
Absolutely. And that is very much so an extreme topic currently in South Africa. And maybe we can cover that in our next conversation where we discuss various monopolies and how some of those monopolies are starting to be broken down. Because if we do have a look, and I'm kind of going off topic here now at the moment, but if we look at a range of our companies and so forth, I mean, if you look at larger first world countries, just looking at banks, a lot of these countries have 30 to 40 banks in their country. We have 6. It's a very bundled up monopoly in that regard. Even if we look at retailers, we have a handful of retailers that dominate the market. But I do know that the South African government is working on extreme action plans at the moment to expand on that and then get more confidence into some of our other competitors in various industries so that, we can have a more diverse economy when it comes to doing business.
Super tight spreads. Yeah, tighter than your jeans after Christmas lunch. What if you could get this value today? Turns out you can. Join ATFX now and let's get you started.
I think let's finish things off. So we have seen that there has been this relative tug of war between short-term optimism, because I think that's kind of what we have at the moment within the rand, is that short-term optimism. Wow, this is doing great. This is the best we've done in more than a year. So definitely some optimism coming into the country at the moment. But there's always, as South Africans, we have this long-term caution whenever we do anything. So when it comes to the rand, if you had to sum everything up that we've discussed here today, do you see the current strength as the start of a real turnaround or just a temporary reprieve? Before some of our deeper challenges, like for instance, what you mentioned regarding energy. If load shedding resurfaces, things won't be going as great for us anymore. So if you had to sum it all up for us, how would you go about it?
I would say it's temporary. And I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier when I looked at fundamentals within South Africa. There's still so much more to be done. But at the same time, there is an opportunity for South Africa to turn things around. This might be temporary, but leaders in South Africa can do something to ensure that the strength of the rand and of the economy continue for the medium to long term. There are various opportunities. A partnership with BRICS, for example, that we mentioned earlier, is one of the things providing the opportunity for South Africa to continue doing well. If our leaders do well in terms of policies, then things could turn out to be positive in the long term. But I just want to add, at the same time, there are analysts who actually believe that the rand as a whole is undervalued. So if that notion is correct, then it is possible for us to see the rand continuing to strengthen up to a point that is, equal to where it should be fundamentally. But if not, then we could see the rand losing strength again. So it's just a matter of observing and seeing how things play out.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm actually one of those analysts who also believe that the rand is currently severely undervalued, but there are a lot of other factors that play into that, and again, we can discuss that in a future session. But thank you for a very insightful discussion today. This was really amazing, and thank you for breaking everything down so clearly for each and every one of our viewers here today. So the rand story is never simple, and as we've heard today, it's a mix of global sentiment, local fundamentals, and a bit of politics sprinkled on top. So just for good measure, I guess. But one thing is for certain, and whether it's a short-term swing or a long-term trend that we are seeing coming up, there's always more beneath the surface when it comes to any economy in any country than what meets the eye. Traders, with that, we come to the end of today's market brief, brought to you by ATFX Africa. If you want to experience the difference for yourself, do yourself a favor, click on the link in the description and head over to the website and go have a look at some of the promotions that we are currently running, such as the 100% deposit bonus. Now, as well, if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please do so that you don't miss out on future discussions such as the one that we are having today. And then with that, we come to the end of today's session. So as always, stay sharp, stay focused, and trade smart.